So, like, what was the time in your life when you first realized, not when people were telling you, like, go to therapy, if somebody said it to you before you actually went, but, like, when you sought it out for yourself?
I went to therapy early on in life, like early.
Really?
Because I knew something was here. I started off in high school, and nobody knew. I kind of self-assessed myself because I was dealing with some other issues and concerns just going on at home. My parents always argued, in my eyes, always argued. And then I had some other stuff going on in high school. I never got in fights in high school, but I was always angry. And there was one incident that they were going to put me out. They were going to put me out of school. My mother came in there, and the principal and the other dude that I had the issue with, his parents were there, and they settled on mandatory. This is the first time I ever went. This is the first time I ever told the story. Maybe not the first time, but they settled on me having to go to mandatory anger management classes in high school. Yeah, so at that point, I knew there was some issues and concerns that I had to deal with in myself. And it wasn't anything particular, but it was the fact of just, like I said, I guess it was a lot of anxiety and stress in my household that then kind of put on me. My first time when I felt like super stress and anxiety was when my brother left, but I was so young at that point. And I think from that point that kind of changed the trajectory of who I was as a person, because that was my guy. Like, everybody has that superhero in their life as far as a male figure. And I love my father to death, you know what I'm saying? That's my man, my father, but it was my brother that was really, because my father was so busy, always working and involved in other things in the community and doing this and doing that. So I spent most of my time, probably 85-90% of my time, with my brother. So that's who raised me. That's my superhero. When I think about, like, who really is that superhero in your eyes, most people like to look at their father, but that's my brother, and I tell him that all the time. And he kind of just, like, shrugs it off, like, yeah, I was just doing what a big brother's supposed to do. But now that's a lot of heavy weight when you're, me and him only 9 years apart. So you gotta figure, when I was, I wasn't even 1 year, he 9 years old, he taking care of me. And so on and so forth. I'm 1, he 10, you know what I'm saying? I'm 2, he 11, you know what I mean? So he's basically like raising me. But I'm remembering all this stuff. And then when he was a teenager, you gotta figure, he's 17, I'm 8, 9 years old at that point. Like, I'm doing stuff that at 8, 9 years old that teenagers doing because I'm hanging with my brother. So I'm doing teenage stuff. I've been all type of stuff at 8, 9 years old that I'm not supposed to be into. So, from early on, I was, kind of had that anxiety and stress in my life. And then from there, it just kind of, that was my thing. And when he left, he went off into the military because he got involved with some things in the street or whatever. And he went to court. I remember he went to court. It was like a Tuesday. I remember it was kind of like, it didn't rain, but it was like an overcast. That's crazy how my mind worked. It was like an overcast outside. And he had to go to court. I believe it was him and a dude up the street, but I don't remember offhand. I believe it was him, maybe a dude up the street, and his girlfriend. The girlfriend wasn't involved, but I think she was just taking him, which is his wife now. So they went. When he came back, he just had this look on his face, and I knew something was different. So, mind you, my brother at that point, my brother's 18, I'm 9. Like I said, we 9 years apart. He had this look on his face that I knew was just different. So he told me, it was like, the judge told me, I got 2 options. I can either go to prison or I can go into the military. So I have to go in the military, like, I gotta go. And he had a conversation with me, but I remember that. And that right there, that hurt me. Cause that was my man, that's who raised me. Yeah, that hurt me right there. So I remember that. That's what taught me how to, I do a lot of stuff, man. Yeah. So that changed me right there, because I didn't have that superhero in my life no more. So then at that point I was kind of left to kind of do on my own, and then that's when I went off and I was not raising myself per se. 'Cause my mother had a crazy job because she was a nurse. God rest her soul. Love you, Mom. Miss you. So she was a nurse, and we lived in New Jersey, but she worked in New York. So I only saw my mother maybe once or twice a week. So for a kid at 9, 8, 9, 10 years old, like you see your mother, most kids, if you're lucky, if you have your mother in your life, which is a whole nother something that we'll talk about down the road. If she's in your life, you see her every day. You come home, whatever. But I would only see my mother on, she would come on Wednesdays, and then like every other weekend, which is like, crazy for a kid at that point. So, and then my father was always busy. So like I said, I was left kind of, with me and my brother. Then my brother left. So then it was kind of just left for me because my mother still worked in New York. So at that point, I had a lot of time to myself. So that's why I, came up with, I kind of pictured myself doing this a long time ago. Being in front of a camera and doing some things and talking about, trying to better myself and all that. Years and years and years before I ever got to this point. I'm 43 now. I was thinking about it when I was like 10, 11 years old. Because I knew, I don't know, I guess I was ahead of my time, you could say, or whatever. But yeah, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but that's how life goes sometimes, right? You all over. So that happened. My brother left, and then that changed who I was as a person. Cause I didn't have that one person I could lean on, talk to, run around with, all of that. So then I sought that in other places. So I started hanging with older dudes and getting in trouble and all of that type of stuff. And like I said, that's when I got to the point to where that kind of transitioned into me getting in trouble in elementary school. I kind of got into some stuff. Middle school, they suspended me off the bus for I don't know how long, because they said I started a riot on the bus.
Did you start a riot?
I mean, it's a great possibility that I started a riot on the bus, but so they put me off the bus, and then, man, that was when I ran into a lot of dudes. I don't know if any of y'all gonna ever see this, but I remember everybody I went to middle school with. So all the Suttons, what's up? Sunbury Village, Lake Valley, Oak Ponds, like Pemberton, everybody out. Hopefully one day y'all run across my podcast. But much love to everybody that I grew up with. I don't have no hate. I've never been a person that disliked this person, that person. Might have been one person ever in life, but I ain't gonna say no names. They already know who they are. But everybody else, I'm saying, love. So if you run across, you know who I am. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, high school was cool, but I ran with the older dudes and they was into stuff. So I started, getting into the street a little bit, doing this and doing that. Like every young man. Big L back in the day had a song, every young man's dream is to be a king when he died. I don't remember exactly the whole words, but big shout out to Big L, rest in peace. But I remember that vividly, what I'm saying, 'cause I used to play that all the time. So I did everybody else did, got into a little, game or whatever, bagged up in my, my house like everybody else. Did what I did. But even in high school, like I knew I had some other issues and stuff going on. And I saw, when I could drive and I had a job, I always worked a couple of jobs, always. So I worked at my cousin, thank you Gina too for that job. My cousin, Gina, got me a job driving vans for mentally handicapped. I would pick them up and take them to a day program in the day. So I would pick them up about 7 o'clock in the morning, drop them off about 8:30. Then I would go off. Now I'm skipping now, probably at the end of my high school career, into the beginning of my college. So I went to community college. So in the process of me doing that, I drove, I was still dibbling dabbling in the street, and then worked 2 or 3 jobs. I worked at CVS warehouse, and then I worked at that job too, driving mentally handicapped. So I was like, I would never go to sleep. I still to this day I really don't sleep like that. So I was, up early in the morning. I would drive. In the middle of the day I would go to class, get off of class, take the dudes back to home. So I kind of split my day off. I would just drive. And then sometimes she would let me get some overtime if I didn't have class. So I would do that. And then I would go back, drive them home, drop them off, and then I would go to my second job, which was at CVS. Big shout out to anybody working in the warehouse, CVS, and I had a million jobs. That's a whole nother thing too. I talked about all my jobs that I had, if I can keep a track of them. But I got a pretty good memory, so I think I could probably name off about 98% of my jobs. So I did that, and then I would go, when I got off work, I would then do a little bit of my homework, and then I would go and dibble dabble in the street a little bit too. So, but as I started doing all of that, I started noticing some changing in me. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm gonna hurt somebody. I was just mad, I was just angry, like I said, I was mad, I was angry. My grandmother had passed away in the process of that situation. My grandmother passed away in '99, God rest her soul. And then from there, the job that my cousin Gina got me had benefits to it, even though it was part-time. In those benefits, I just remember she gave me the paperwork, and you saw, you get a job, you get benefits, you kind of, some people look through the paperwork, whatever. But I just remember them going over the benefits and them saying that they had like a helpline for like, mental health or whatever. And I remember that vividly, because that's when the whole process of me dealing with my own mental health started. Because I called that line, I was just like,